Hello, I'm Robert. Welcome to my channel and fact-checking for our Facebook group Doomsday Debunked, where we help people who are scared of many things. And this is just rather positive news in the United States. Already, we are seeing many counties that have had no cases of COVID, no new cases of COVID in the last day, in today. And so far, if you go down and look at this list, then keep on going down and down and down. All those have had no cases for the entire county. And we go all the way down, and it's the first case is county 78. So there's 77 counties that haven't had any new cases today. And then the county with the largest population is Madison County, which has 35,000. Says its population is 35,000, and look, it was running at nearly 250 cases a day, well over 200 in November, and then it was still running at 75 cases per day or so in through to December, and then it's had little blips of 20 or so in January, and now it's down, and it's had no cases today. It's had another couple of days with no cases, and that's the first time since April. So, and so that's really this shows that I've talked in my last video about how the United States, any country, can aim for zero COVID, because when the cases are going down like that, that means that as long as you keep on doing whatever you're doing, that is bringing the cases down, then eventually it'll be gone. Just a mathematical thing, that if you keep the transmission less than 1, if you can keep your R0 less than 1, then eventually it'll be gone. And it doesn't matter if you do that with the vaccine, or you do it with public health measures, or you do it with a combination of the two. Keep the R0 below 1, and eventually you can eliminate it from your country. And this is what Madison County is on the way to doing it. And then you have to keep it down, so obviously it'll probably blip up again. It's not going to be stuck down there immediately. But if they then keep on doing what they're doing now, whatever it is they're doing now, just keep it up. And then when you're down to 0 cases, then you've got to keep it up for 2 quarantine periods. And that makes sure that you've got no cases left circulating in your community. And so that's after another 4 weeks. And then, if you can do border control, I suppose it's very difficult for a county to do border control, but if you did, or if you don't have much travel, then you can then keep it, then you can let up everything. So if Madison County could do border control and manage to keep people out with quarantine, then it could be like New Zealand, and they could just relax everything after another 4 weeks of relaxing, of quarantine, of 0 cases. They know it's no longer in their circulating community, and they can just go back to normal. And if we have a look at the actual, now if we get my preview out of the way just a minute, then you can see that there's several green areas, and they've got this kind of joined up almost a corridor of green in Nebraska. So now if we keep that up, and so we've got some red areas still, got some really quite high cases per day. I mean, let's bring that up in a new window and see what it looks like. But if eventually we get them all down to, if you could get the whole of Nebraska green eventually. And so this is a way to start looking at it, so here's another one. Well, why does that come up with Colorado? I don't understand. Nebraska. Oh, I just tried clicking in the wrong place. Right, I'm looking for one of these really, let's look at one so to make sure I don't, Grant County is one of the worst ones. So if we wait for that one to come up, and then we look at that one. So anyway, while I'm waiting for that, I'll just have a look down a little bit further at this. You can see the infection rate, and you see I was well above 1, and that means it was increasing. That's the 1.1, 1.4, well above 1. That would be increasing rapidly, and then gradually wavering around, and when it's at 1, and when it's above 1, then that means it's increasing. When it's below 1, it means it's decreasing. You see it's gone all the way down to 0. It's dipped down 0.42. So in other words, you've blocked out 42% of transmission. And it's not due to vaccination. They haven't had that many vaccinations yet. And there's no way it's herd immunity, obviously. See, these are the vaccinations so far. And vaccinated. Oh, sorry, no, it hasn't had any vaccinations yet. These are the cases, sorry. So it's no vaccinations yet, no vaccination data available, so it can't have had many vaccinations yet. So now let's look at Grant County and see how that one's doing. So Grant County is one of the worst ones, but let's see it's jiggling up and down, and it's less than it was then. It's still, and you're talking about that's obviously got a much smaller population because it's critical to only 45 cases. But and some of those counties will have rather larger populations, and but that's well within reach to eventually get down to green. It's just jiggling around. So you just bit by bit, you can just get every larger and larger regions of your county, and I don't know I don't know which of the populated counties and which aren't. I could have checked before I did this, but if you look at the United States as a whole, then the cases are coming down quite fast. And if you look at it county by county, then there'll be some counties that have cities in them, and obviously it's a big challenge for those to go down to 0. But there'll be lots of counties where it really is a feasible thing to aim for, to go for 0 COVID. And the more rural, the lower. So there you are. There's another example. So that is really up in the critical, but you can see it's coming down and down, and you can see that the green is within reach for that county too. So even some of these ones that are showing as red, then they'll be eventually orange, then yellow, and then eventually they'll be green. And it mightn't be that long before that one is green, maybe a few more weeks. And they could speed that up hugely by using much better measures than they're using now. For instance, isolating cases away from their household, and testing very rapid test turnarounds, and then better physical distancing and masks. And I think it's not the vaccination, it's obviously not herd immunity. Then I think it has to be that it's better public health, people more aware of news of the variants has led to people being more careful. And then just the example from the top, because we are very sociable animals, and people tend to unthinkingly follow the examples of what they see. So if they see people on television who are not doing physical distancing and who are crowding around in crowds, and they're not wearing masks or anything, then they are likely to do the same, even without thinking about what they're doing. They just want to fit in with everyone else, and just a natural instinct that most people have. It's really, some people don't have that instinct so much, but many people have a very strong instinct to fit in with whatever they see. And when they see a lot of things going on television, they want to fit in with that. So I think that's why it's turned around like that, peak like that. It's definitely the public health measures and the mask wearing, physical distancing, and then sometimes it's closing down of restaurants and things like that. So anyway, that's just the main thing I wanted to say, that we've got these green things, and bit by bit we're going to bring them all together. And I've already talked about how we can aim for zero COVID for the entire world. And I wonder if the United States will do its state. I think I can't see the countries that have achieved zero COVID giving it up. I just can't see that happening unless it really becomes incredibly mild, like a cold. Why would New Zealand allow something in that is as bad as the flu? Why would you do it? What motivation could the rest of the world give to New Zealand to get it to accept an extra disease that it's already eliminated? The same for China, the same for Taiwan, same for Vietnam. However much the rest of the world might go for endemic, how can they convince these countries to go for endemic? I can't see it happening ever, unless it becomes very, very, very mild. So I think we see a future. A fifth of the world is either zero COVID or that's its aim, and it's only got a few cases. It's got a few, like China's 1,000 cases or so now. It'll get over that outbreak, like it got over all its other outbreaks. Its aim is zero COVID. It's not going to let that just spread through the country. And even if they vaccinate all of China, they're not going to let it spread through China again. Not after all the work they did to get rid of it. So we are either sent for a future where half the world has it endemic, part of the world has endemic, the other part has it zero. And then country by country, one or another country will look at the zero and say, well, I want to be like that. They'll just push it a little bit, and then there'll be zero COVID. And then they'll go over. Then another country will do that, and then another. I know in Europe, Germany, there are many people in Germany who want to go to zero COVID. So for instance, Germany might end up being zero COVID, and then we'd have to quarantine the rest of Europe until they join in. Denmark might go zero COVID. And South Africa is reduced, even with the South African variant, it's reducing its cases very fast. And I calculated that just at the rate it's going at the moment, with no vaccination yet, it could reach 1 case per day in less than 100 days. So add a vaccine as well, and if the vaccine halves the transmission rate, then that halves the time it takes. So that would be 50 days. They would reach 1 case per day. And so South Africa is really not that far away from eliminating COVID, and do better, stricter public health as you get. And as the cases per day go down, when you've got 1 case per day, then you can throw everything at that case. And when you're at 1 case per day, the chances are that you've got particular regions that have the outbreaks where it hasn't gone yet. That's how it happens generally. You have these green areas, they spread more and more, and you have little outbreaks which are left, which are in these little red areas. And that's what you expect. As we get down to nearly zero, it's not going to be that you've got just 1 or 2 people all everywhere throughout the population, 1 person in 1,000 has COVID. It's not going to work like that. And then 1 in 10,000, then 1 in 100,000. It's going to work. You can have one particular county, one particular city, one particular urban area where you've got a fair few COVID cases. You've got an outbreak, maybe 100 cases. So then it would just makes no sense to then just let that spread out again. You would then go in and say, we've got to stop this outbreak. You would have a localised lockdown probably, like they do in Australia. And some restrictions, you decide what the restrictions are. It might just be quite simple restrictions, like no large gatherings, and everybody wearing masks and physical distancing. But you may close the restaurants. You don't need to do a very strict lockdown. It depends on the situation. And then you go in with your vaccines and you vaccinate everyone in that region. And that can happen long, long before you've managed to vaccinate everyone in your country. So South Africa, if it's going down to say 50 cases, if say in 50 days from now, with the help of vaccines and better public health, then South Africa could be at 1 case per day. And that's just the way the maths goes. If the vaccine stops half the transmission, and if they better mask wearing, the CDC say that masks could stop 3/4 of transmission. So that would make a huge difference. Better test, trace, isolate also makes a big difference. So suppose South Africa steps up a bit and manages to stop half the transmission more than it is already, then it could easily, in 50 days, then it could be down to 1 case per day. Then it would be some little region where there's perhaps 100 cases in South Africa, where it's an active ongoing outbreak. That's just how it works. So then they'd have a really strict lockdown there. They'd vaccinate everyone in that little region, and they'd do test, trace, isolate, and by then they've got all the traces that they have for now. And so long as they don't sack them, and it's very stupid to sack your contact tracers or so you tell them to find another job when the cases go down, down, down. As long as you keep the same number of contact tracers who are being very stretched to the limit now, and you keep them when you're down to 1 case per day, then you've got abundant contact tracers, and they could go door to door to everyone, and they can talk for an hour every day and just carefully go through and find all their contacts and do it really, really properly, and then make sure that and then they can all be isolated, just like what New Zealand does with its very few cases per day. Then you get free accommodation in a hotel if you're a resident native-born New Zealander. And you've got COVID, then you've got free accommodation, hotel, Wi-Fi, everything. Whatever you need, then you've got it. And then your food, your free food, your free phone calls, free Wi-Fi, because they want you to stay in the hotel. And then it's managed isolation. You're actually not permitted to do anything else. And the population are behind that because they see the value of eliminating it. So once you get down to 1 case per day, that 1 case per day, then they get VIP treatment to make sure that they isolate and that all the contacts are quarantined. And that, I think, is what we're going to see, at least in some countries, the ones that are most sensible, as they get down and down, and you get more and more regions zero COVID, and then the few remaining regions where there are outbreaks, then why let up? I know we did that last summer, but the thing is we've learned from that. We've seen what happens if you let up. And I am very hopeful that this time around that some countries will see sense and will realise that although your risk is absolutely minute, once you've got down to just 1 case per day per country, it still doesn't make sense to tell all your contact tracers to go home and just rely on vaccination. I think we're going to get more and more countries go to zero COVID. And that can happen long before everyone is vaccinated. So we, for instance, Nebraska, these counties are zero COVID already. They're very close to zero COVID, and many of them have had no vaccines or very few vaccines. I think it's 10% or something in the United States. It's not because of vaccines they've gone green. So we can have a situation where in the United States, so Biden is talking about, we've got to vaccinate 150 million in 100 days. But by the end of 100 days, then most of the United States may already be green. Certainly be a lot more than that, 77 counties. And there may even be entire states that are green by 150 days. So then the priority for the vaccines, you vaccinate all the elderly and the frontline health workers long before. And so then it makes most sense to vaccinate the areas where the outbreaks are. And so in that case, we can have all the outbreaks fully vaccinated, quite possibly in the United States, 100 days from now. I don't see why not. So, and we actually see the cases per day in the United States, they're going down faster. Let me just bring up just be a minute. Right. So I'm just going to brought up the cases, and look, it's now dropped 36%. I've been watching that number. It's been increasing. And you can see that on the graph as well. If it was a proper exponential recurving off like that, it's not. It's almost going the other way. Sort of pretty much a straight line. If it was a straight line, if it continued as a straight line, then they'd be down to zero sometime in March. That's not how these curves normally go. And so it's quite, I'll just stop it, I don't know what that's about. So it's just, if it's coming, you wouldn't expect that. It's just very, very surprising. It shows that you have vigorous public health that is getting better as it goes down, because it's going down in a straight line. It's not curving. I think it's already, it's already clear enough. That's so close to a straight line. It doesn't look right. And so it must. They obviously are controlling it more and more, and that's what you expect. And that's before Biden's COVID budget. Once at last they got this whole impeachment thing out of the way, then at last he can get his budget underway again. And really, I mean, I just wish this impeachment thing was over. It's such a waste of time, really. But there we go. I mean, it totally makes sense. You do have to say that this is totally not. It's not acceptable. I do really, we need a strong message that it's not acceptable for a president to incite an insurrection. But really, we've got more important things than that. In some ways, I can understand why both sides want it over quickly. So anyway, so that's down. His relief bill is going to come in, and he has many extra funding. So he's doing a lot of things just by his executive orders, but he also will free Congress for other legislative action if he's got anything he can pass through, and particularly the budget, and be able to fund things. And so already it's getting better and better controlled, and it should get even more and more controlled with the extra the advances from the budget and so on. Anyway, that's that. So I just wanted to say, I think things are looking really good in the United States. I mean, it's not good now, but it's getting. I mean, look at the number, 100,000 a day. I mean, that's a huge number, just short of 100,000 a day. But it's really looking as if it'll be. So that would be another halving in 50,000, 10,000, but it could be much faster than that. And really, all of us, we just need to. I've done many videos about do it all, so just keep on doing everything. I've talked about everything you have to do, and I expect hopefully most of you are following the World Health Organization and the US CDC and good reliable sources, and are doing your bit to stop COVID-19. Anyway, so I'll upload this, and if any of you are good at fact checking, then you're very welcome to our group. Do read the rules at the head of the group before you post or comment. They're very important. And I mean, for instance, we get people in the group who might seem to be trolls. The reason is because trolls imitate the people in our group. When people are very scared, they get very repetitive, and they ask the same question over and over again. They don't think very clearly, and you may seem sometimes, and then they get scared of very strange things in our group, or it seems to, if you've got a good background in physics. You may be quite surprised to learn that many people, especially young people, we can have, I think it's 13, 14 is the youngest age in Facebook, and especially young children, then they, but also surprisingly quite a lot of adults as well, have no idea that zombies are physically impossible. They watch the movies about zombies, and they just don't know that there is no such thing as a zombie. And what makes it really quite difficult for them is that the CDC has a tongue-in-cheek page where they talk about preparing for a zombie pandemic, a zombie outbreak, and they never on that page explain clearly that it's a joke. And so you get these people saying, look, the CDC has a page about it. Surely zombies are real. So this can be quite difficult to understand you've got a scientific background. So we just explain, zombies aren't real. If it's impossible for a dead body to walk without oxygen and without a heart pumping and without breathing, and then they get it. But you actually have to explain that. So, and then you get people who sort of understand it, but then they are still surrounded by other people telling them that there'll be a zombie apocalypse, and so they get scared, even though they understand logically that it's not possible. So if you come into the group and you see things like that, and then you may think, oh, these people are trolling. They're not. They are the people the trolls imitate in order to become believable. So that is one of the rules in the group. You can talk to the admins and say and the moderators and say, I'm not sure this person is genuine or whatever, but please, no public accusations. That's the point. Because it actually usually turns out that the person concerned is not trolling, and that they are just very scared and confused and terrified, and they're quite often vomiting with fear and really take these things very, very hard, some of these things that to you might just seem silly. And so to laugh at someone in that situation is very cruel, and it's not permitted. So you can't laugh. You're not permitted to make a joke of them, and you're not permitted to publicly accuse them of trolling, which would be very hurtful for someone who is very scared, and they know that what they say is people tend not to listen to them, not to believe them, and so it's just not permitted. That's one of the very important rules at the head of the group. Anyway, may see some of you in the group.